Now we have Zoe Sakoutis.
Oh my God.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you.
You too.
Zoe Sakoutis, one of the co-founders of Blueprint and the co-founder and current host, producer, editor, all the above of Highway to Well.
That is correct. Yeah, Highway to Well.
Yes.
HTW Podcast.
How do you
for short.
how do you say it?
So HTW Podcast with Zoe and Erica is
Okay.
how we are. Is how you can find it. Yeah.
Now you were featured on our podcast, Taste Radio, a few months back.
I was.
Once again, you and your co-founder Erica Huss.
Yes.
One of my favorite podcasts still to date. I really enjoyed our conversation, which we
that's
recorded
right.
here in New York City.
Thanks.
Tell us about, we talked a little bit about the development of the podcast, your podcast on ours, but for viewers at home who are not familiar with what you guys do, tell us a little about it.
So we like to call it the intersection of wellness and business.
Okay.
And we talk to founders, experts. These days we're a little bit more talking to doctors, practitioners, and going deep on specific subjects. Anything from like mold to menopause.
Did you say mold to menopause?
I did. I mean, these are the things that are impacting our health, things that typically aren't being talked about enough. And so we are, we're trying to sort of democratize the conversation around wellness.
And it's not necessarily trade focused, but you do talk to folks who are of the industry, so to speak.
Yeah, we do. By nature of the fact that we come from the beverage industry, we talk to a lot of founders, a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are doing exciting things in the wellness space. Yeah.
And so if you're, talking to these people, you must, sort of be as much on the ground, in the trenches with them, finding out what's new, innovative, and exciting about wellness. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned? What are some of the key insights that you've gotten from doing the podcast?
Well, that is the beauty of doing this podcast, is that the learning never ends. I mean, it's really just, when we go deep on a subject, we learn a lot there, but we learn a lot about the struggles that entrepreneurs have had, which oftentimes I will say are very similar to the ones that we've experienced.
Right.
So, it's anything from not raising enough money, which seems to be a big deal for a lot of people.
I think we had our beverage school session yesterday.
Oh, you did?
And we had one of our presenters who's an entrepreneur was like, he had just a big slide up there that said, "You will run out of money."
This is the thing. And I think if I had to give myself advice for Blueprint days, it would be, it was nice because we never had to raise money. But looking back, I would say that would have been the best time to raise money. Yeah. But I think that because we were the first mover and we were so, hyper-focused on staying at the helm and did not want to dilute ourselves and didn't want to give anything away, and we didn't have to because we were sort of cash positive, we never raised money. We just went right to acquisition. Yeah. That said, had we raised money, I think we probably could have eclipsed some of the later competitors who did raise a lot of money and eventually eclipsed us. So, and it is a full-time job, so you really only want to do it once, right? It's going to take a lot of time, so you really have to make sure that you have enough runway.
It's very hard to run a business just on cash flow and build it that way and scale that way.
Yeah.
But, so I know, since the Blueprint days and, the Highway to Well, HTW, you guys have also done some other things, you and Erica, in terms of mentoring and working with early stage brands as well. What are some of the key lessons? What are some of the things that they need help with more than just say raising money? How are you advising them on making their way through this business?
Well, I mean, I think that the number one thing is product, right? So everybody comes out with their formula. They get very excited. Maybe they don't do any market testing. They don't get enough feedback. Yeah. I think if you don't have your product totally dialed and, if it is not truly amazing, there's never going to be a pull on the other end. Right. You're just going to put all your money into pushing it. So I think just first and foremost, making sure that your product, not just in terms of, flavor profiles, but in terms of ingredients, like making sure that your ingredients are really ahead of the curve, that you're kind of looking around the corner and making sure that like this isn't going to be an ingredient that we're going to find fault with in like 2 years. Like so many others, like agave used to be a darling and now it's like the demon. But So I think product first is so important. And, there's we're Americans, so we like flavor, but I think we also are looking for functionality today.
Yeah.
I think everyone's becoming so much more conscious in how we're eating. And, those are the two areas where I feel like we sort of excel. Flavor and functionality. Yeah.
So within that, there's also, formulation, and everyone talks about sugar as being the devil. Is it as much of a problem? Do you see it as being as much of a problem as, most people do at this point? Or is it just like, look, as you mentioned, we're Americans, we have to accept a certain amount of sugar to get the flavor that we want?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Okay. What I hate the most is when people say sugar is sugar.
Okay.
It really drives me nuts because I think it's oversimplifying the sort of complexity of the human body. I mean,
Right.
We don't process all sugars in the same way. So I think that is kind of territory where we need to be careful, and tread lightly there. I don't think all sugar is sugar, but I do think, yes, at the end of the day, it needs to come way down across the board. There's way too much sugar in just about everything, especially beverage these days. So if you can sweeten it with something natural, great. Staying away from this sort of more chemically, where we start to screw with the molecular structure of some sweeteners, I think it's a little bit dangerous, but yeah.
So an obvious question is,
Yes.
As a serial entrepreneur, what are you working on now? Can you talk about anything that you're working on?
Come on, Ray.
Now, you can tease
okay.
if you don't want to tell us too much.
No. Yeah,
Okay.
So Erica and I, my work wife, my partner, we are working on a beverage right now, so it'll be our first since Blueprint that we're super excited about. Hopefully it will emerge by the end of the year.
Okay.
I can tell you that it is a beverage. And
All right.
that's kind of it. But we're very excited about it.
It must be so exciting because it must bring you back to the days when you were starting Blueprint, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot we had to do this or that, or man, I really didn't want to work with this person again, but they're not in the beverage industry anymore.
Yeah.
It's got to be really interesting actually at this point, trying to get back into the game, so to speak.
It's evolved a lot. It's
Yeah.
definitely changed a lot since 2014.
Yeah.
But we're gonna figure it out all over again, I think.
One of the things when we emailed a few weeks back is you had said this is your first BevNET Live, right?
It is, yeah.
And we were like, how is that possible?
How is it possible? I don't know. We've never been here. We were just sort of living under a rock, I guess.
We had talked about Blueprint a lot on stage and as part of our conference and agenda, but it's so great to have you guys here. And I hope you're really getting something out of it. I know it's only been a half day to this point, but I mean, it's really interesting to see the beverage community and see how it's thriving and how much it has changed since, a few years back.
Yeah, there's no shortage of beverage here. It's pretty exciting. There's a lot of interesting brands.
Did you see anything in the cooler that you really particularly like?
I would say everything in the adaptogen space is pretty interesting to me at the moment.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Zoe, it's such a pleasure sitting down with you as always.
You too, Ray. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.